What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the PG Pitt Show. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel. I'm Stephen Thompson. That's Abby Schnable. We cover Pitt athletics for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And Abby, it is arguably the most important week of the year. I'd be hard pressed to think of a game that at the beginning of the year mattered more on Pitt's schedule than the Backyard Brawl. If for no other reason than this series is going away for a little bit. It's taken a bit of a hiatus after 2025. I think that puts a little bit more on us, on all of us as reporters, as fans, as players to enjoy this a little bit more. Savor it, savor the hate, savor the excitement, savor the buildup, savor the atmosphere on Saturday before we have to go without it for a few years.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the more volatile rivalries. I mean, I know the SEC has a lot of hatred in their rivalries, but man, I have never seen two fan bases personally myself have never seen two fan bases hate each other as much as Pitt and West Virginia does, and with this going away, you gotta soak it all up. Pitt's going to be looking to upset West Virginia on their home field, and West Virginia is going to be hoping to come back from that last minute touchdown last year that cost them the game. So I don't know, I'm excited. This is my first Backyard Brawl in West Virginia. I was at the one in Pittsburgh last year. So I just am excited to see the atmosphere and see if things get, I don't know.
Chippy, yeah. No, it's like I was down there the last time Pitt played down there, and it was a special environment. And it was a night game, so people had all day in the lots to kind of get prepared for it, get set for that game, to I don't know, have a few beverages or two. So I think everyone is going to have fun down there, and then the game will start and everyone will be an anxious mess. So yeah, no, really exciting week, and I think the proximity really creates that kind of hatred, and it just means that Pitt and West Virginia fans are kind of intermingling all week, and just there's going to be plenty of opportunities for trash talk and everything like that as everyone gets prepared for kickoff on Saturday afternoon. But Abby, I want to take it back to last week for a minute and take it back to honestly the week before. So Pitt played in two games against two opponents that let's be honest, they were decidedly better than. They had a talent advantage against both Central Michigan, and Duquesne. So it's not as simple as saying, hey, you put up a bunch of points and you won the game, you look good. But I want to get your thoughts on this offense specifically. I think the defense a little bit more of a known commodity, but the offense, I just want to get your impression of how they've played through 2 weeks. And I guess not just the numbers tell you, but what the eye test maybe tells you as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like for a lot of the offense, the numbers say one thing and the eye test might say a different thing, or just not totally back up those numbers. One area that I've been really looking at closely is just the run game. With Desmond Reid returning, you expect big numbers, you expect long runs, you expect more touchdowns, not only from him, but just from the run game in general. And I know the depth is a little wonky behind Desmond Reid just because of the injuries, but when I wrote out the numbers, I was like, oh, this running back room is doing pretty good. The rush is doing pretty good. I mean, they're averaging 5.32 yards per attempt. They have had 53 carries for 282 yards, which are really solid numbers. I think eye test wise, it hasn't jumped out to me. Like, there has been nothing explosive about the run game. And I think that's the thing that's like holding me back from saying that, yeah, the run game's really solid. And I know we talked about this after the game on Saturday. It's very similar with Eli Holstein at the QB spot, just because, like you said, these are two teams that Pitt should really have no issue with. So why is Eli Holstein getting sacked? What's going on with the offensive line that's not allowing them to hold off the defense? And why is Eli Holstein throwing interceptions? Why is Desmond Reid not able to get out? And it has me questioning some things, because these are easier opponents. And if this is what's showing now, what's going to happen when we get into, this weekend against West Virginia, but also in ACC play? I got to say, though, wide receiver room has looked great. I mean, from top to bottom, there is really not a bad receiver out there. Poppy Williams had a really good game on Saturday. Blue Hicks the week before, and others are just making flashes. So, I mean, Narduzzi said he's content with the offense. He's liked it for the most part. I just don't know if the what I'm seeing on the field backs up the numbers right now.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. There's been a lot of explosiveness in the passing offense, especially. Desmond Reid broke a big 53-yard run against Duquesne. But I don't think you're off base that the week after the number of explosive runs were significantly diminished. And my other thing about the run game, and I think they, like you said, they've been good in the run game. I mean, there were 6.8 sack adjusted against Duquesne, 5.12 against Central Michigan the week after. So I think they've been fine. But I think the other thing that's really interesting, and maybe why it feels less like the running game has been more explosive, is that some of their best run plays or gains on the ground, and some of the explosive ones too, have come from Eli Holstein scrambling. His legs have been a real weapon for Pitt so far this season, which is not necessarily and not something I guess I counted on coming into this year. I thought it was going to be really pass heavy. I thought they were going to coach Eli Holstein to stay in the pocket a little bit longer and to use his arm a little bit more, not just to protect him, but I think that's where Des Reid really shines, is in the pass game, and I think getting these speedy receivers out in space is how Pitt really wanted to play and how they still want to play too. But clearly, allowing Eli Holstein the freedom to move when he feels comfortable and when he sees a lane is going to be a big part of this offense moving forward, and something that Pitt doesn't want to take away from him. Narduzzi said that pretty specifically today. If they could try to contain Eli Holstein too much, if they tell him, hey, we need to protect you, you need to you need to slide more, you need to step out of bounds, you can't kind of look for more plays to create on your own with your legs, that takes away a big part of his game. And that's just something that you don't want to do, is limit an explosive athlete's ability to make plays with his feet. And the other thing is Eli does a lot of great things, off script in the passing game too. So some of his biggest passing plays as well have come when he's gotten outside the pocket or when he's extended plays. I think, obviously, one of Poppy Williams' touchdowns, a really long one, I think it was for 48 yards or something like that. Last Saturday, that was kind of coming off script, and that was Eli Holstein extending a play. He threw a touchdown to Kenny Johnson 2 weeks ago. That was, him extending the play and manipulating the pocket a little bit. So Eli's legs are an asset, and you don't want to take those away from him. And but that's not to the larger point about the run game. That's not traditional handoffs to Desmond Reid or Juelz Goff. Those are your quarterback making plays in that way. And so for me, I think I don't think your thought about the running game maybe not showing everything or being as good as they could have been isn't necessarily off base, but I think also we're seeing it manifest in some different ways too. And I think Pitt's going to play it a little bit differently in the run game as well too. And I'd also point out that I don't mean to cut you off, but I just think Central Michigan's also a pretty good team. That's the other thing. We, I think, are going to look back on this game, and Central Michigan is Central Michigan, and the name on the front is the name on the front, and Pitt has all the advantages that we talked about, but that's a solid defense, I think. And so I'm not necessarily discouraged if they weren't, breaking 50-yard, 20-yard runs every single time. I actually do think that you're getting a lot of what you want to see out of this Pitt offense right now.
I think it also, you have to take into consideration that Desmond Reid wasn't the big name he is now last year. Like last year at this point in the season, he had already 33 carries, 293 yards, but that was in a Cincinnati game. Well, a lot of those came from a Cincinnati game where he was needed. And right now he's at 18 carries for 112 yards, which again, for a wide receiver 2 games in, isn't bad at all. And you have to factor in that he is taking less snaps on the offensive side of things partially probably because you want to rest him a little bit, also because you want to give some of those younger, less experienced running backs like Joel Goff, like Shadarian Turner, opportunities out there, and they've been making the most of their opportunities. So I'm not mad at it. I think the offense is looking mostly really good, especially when you factor in how many weapons they have. Like, they are not beholden to just passing or just running. And I think that makes them a little bit more dangerous than maybe people would have thought in the preseason.
Yep, and to put a couple more numbers to your point about Reid's workload, he played 110 snaps total in weeks 1 and 2 of last season. A Cincinnati game that was a power conference game, one that you really want to win if you're Pitt, but also a Kent State game where you were in a similar situation like you were, against Central Michigan or Duquesne, where you feel you can kind of overpower them. This year, just 66, just 80 total snaps, 14 of those coming on special teams as well. So definitely a diminished workload for Desmond Reid so far this year, which also, like you said, does play a role in this as well. I mean, I think Joel Goff and Shadarian Turner, good backs. They are not guys who are going to rip off the same kind of explosive runs like Desmond Reid does with ease. Abby, want to shift gears a little bit. Let's go to the other side of the ball because, one interesting thing about the Central Michigan game was, first of all, Rashad Battle, not in uniform for that game, had a cast around one of his hands. And then Tamon Lynham leaves the game somewhat early. He came up limping in the first quarter, I believe, if not the first half, and did not return to the game. So Pitt plays a ton of that Central Michigan game with Shawn Lee and Shadarian Harrison as effectively their first-string corners in that game. And want to know what your impressions of them in that game were. It felt like, at certain points, Central Michigan was able to move the ball through the air, which is maybe not something we expected out of a team that, we came in saying they were going to run the ball, at least 70% of the time, if not 80%.
I got to say that I was pretty impressed with Shadarian Harrison and Shawn Lee. I didn't feel like there was much, if any, of a drop off from the ones to the twos. And I honestly thought that they went after things a little bit more than, say, Tamon Lynham, specifically in the Duquesne game. We talked about it on one of the shows about how we'd just like to see them, really take advantage and really be better in the backfield. Sorry, not the backfield, in the secondary. And I felt like Shadarian Harrison and Shawn Lee did that more, especially when it came as not a surprise, but just as not as expected when those passes got out there. I mean, you got to look at the stats too. I mean, Harrison played nearly every snap on defense. He played some in the Duquesne game, but he was out there almost the whole game, and he had 9 tackles, 6 of which were solo. And those numbers aren't surprising when you think about how hyped up he was in the spring. So it's good to see him go out there and make the most of that opportunity. Shawn Lee also had a pretty decent game. He was just not in maybe as much as Harrison, but he also had 3 tackles. And I just think that this says a lot about the cornerback depth, that you have these guys out there. And I think this is an area we talked about maybe not having as much depth just because we hadn't seen them. And now that we've seen them, I feel very comfortable in Pitt able to go down the depth chart from the ones to the twos or mix them up a little bit as needed from this cornerback room, which I think is huge because, like you said, Rashad Battle's in a cast. Who knows how long he'll be out. And it's good to know that the people behind him are able to make the most of those opportunities.
Absolutely. And, like I alluded to earlier, I thought Central Michigan moved the ball through the air a lot more effectively than I expected them to. They were really efficient. I think they completed upwards of 75% of their passes, threw for 177 yards, threw a touchdown through the air. Just not something that I expected from them. They got some dudes at wide receiver. That was the other thing. So, Harrison and Lee, typically you don't want to see your corners making a ton of tackles, especially when a team throws the ball a ton. That usually means that guys are catching the ball right in front of them, which isn't ideal. But, I think that Harrison and Lee were making a ton of those, were maybe giving up some short passes, but not allowing a ton of yards. You know what I mean? So did a good job of keeping the ball in front of them. Central Michigan guys, give them credit. Like, they made some pretty remarkable catches as well with defenders in coverage. But the secondary as a whole, and specifically those guys at corner, in my opinion, did a pretty decent job of keeping the
Mhm.
ball in front of them and not allowing explosive plays or yards after the catch, which could sometimes be a problem a year ago. So, yeah, I feel the same way. I have confidence in that cornerback room. I think I've said that, I'm not sure Rashad Battle and Tamon Lynam are All Americans or even all ACC players. I think Battle, especially, in that Duquesne game, I thought looked really good. So, he's proven me wrong a little bit. But yeah, I don't think there's a huge drop off from Battle or Lynam to, Shawn Lee, who's only going to get better as a true
Mhm.
freshman who's getting a ton of playing time right
Yeah.
away. That really doesn't happen at Pitt unless you're a good player. And then, Harrison, I love the frame that he has, long athlete. And I think he played pretty well too. So overall encouraged by what you see from the cornerbacks, excuse me. The one thing that I'll add is, though, that Narduzzi said on Saturday that they played most of the day with their backup cornerbacks, but they don't expect that to be the case moving forward, or at least this week against West Virginia. So encouraging news, but depth is depth, and you'll always take more depth, especially at a corner spot where you're playing a bunch of man coverage, and you're going to have guys running up and down the field. It's a place that Pitt has traditionally liked to rotate guys in and out of. And Abby, Backyard Brawl week, a lot of excitement around this game, but if you're West Virginia, maybe a little bit more anxiety, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Dread, is that an appropriate word? It's not just because you lose to Ohio on the road. I think that's a game that a lot of people were circling as a trendy upset pick this week. And that was before, Jaheim White goes down with an injury. We learned today that it's season ending, a knee injury, which is really devastating for him personally, but for West Virginia as a whole as well. They have another receiver going down, Jaden Bray, who I believe is I want to say their second leading receiver. He's third in yards from scrimmage for them this year, only behind Jaheim White and Cam Vaughn. Cam Vaughn, who's a really good player as well. But then you've also got a starting linebacker who's dealing with an injury, and they're unsure of his status for Saturday as well. So the betting lines have changed pretty significantly. Pitt opened as a 2.5-point favorite. A lot of continuity on Pitt, not a lot of continuity on West Virginia. It was, upwards of 70 new players, among the most in the country. But now that line moves to about 6.5 as of this afternoon. So it's just not looking good for our friends down in Morgantown. And do you feel this game loses any juice because of what happened in Athens, Ohio last weekend or on Saturday, or does the fact that it's still a rivalry game like this kind of carry you?
I think you're still going to have a lot of juice because of the rivalry and because of how much these two programs dislike each other, and the fact that you brought up this is the last time for 4 years that we're going to see this game. And so I still think the juice is going to be there. It might be carried a bit more by the fans simply because of the fact that they're missing two of their top offensive options coming off of a game where, even with said offensive options through the first half, didn't look particularly great. I mean, I haven't been impressed with quarterback Nico Marchiol, or I'm probably saying that wrong, but I think coming off of the Ohio game, it in theory should give West Virginia a bit more juice. But then when you factor in the injuries, it's almost like the wind is being taken out of the sails. So it'll be interesting because I think the fans will bring the energy and the hatred, but I'm not sure if you're going to see a West Virginia team that's ready to come out and come out hot against a Pitt team that has been doing pretty decent through these first two games.
Yeah, Pitt has kind of lived up to expectations, I would say, through these two
Yeah.
games. West Virginia, I guess it was hard to say what your expectations were for them, but you probably expect them to win that Ohio game going in there. It is hard to imagine. I think there was a scenario where, even if I think Pitt is the better team on paper, I could have seen a West Virginia team with Jaden Bray and with Jaheim White on offense. Rich Rod able to scheme up some good plays for them. I can imagine a scenario where at home that team beats Pitt.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have shocked me. I thought even if they looked rough against Ohio, that if you get out of there healthy, if you have your best playmaker, you have at least a puncher's chance, probably even more than a puncher's chance. I might not be giving them enough credit as this new roster kind of gels and gets some more game time together, goes on the road to a tough environment, and is able to at least get out of there healthy. I thought that experience would have been helpful for a West Virginia team. But now you have to kind of do some adjusting again, and you have to kind of learn about who this team is now, and especially on offense. And so for a Pitt team that did really well stopping the run the first 2 weeks of the year, that is doing their own gelling as well. It's just hard to. I don't want to do too much of a game preview, but sitting here on Monday, September 8th at 3:30 p.m., it is just hard to imagine a path to victory for West Virginia in this game. All that said, bad teams have won the Backyard Brawl before, and they probably will do it again. So you really can't discount anything. But it's going to be an uphill battle for the Mountaineers. It does seem like it.
That's what I love about college sports, not just even college football, is that like an upset is literally just one play away. I mean, we saw it like how close Central Michigan was able to cut a pretty decent Pitt gap there for a little bit. And West Virginia having the hatred towards the Panthers, maybe if they were healthy, that's enough of the juice to take them over the top, despite the continuity that the Panthers have. But like you said, I just have a hard time seeing it happen with, some of their top guys, Jaheim White being top of that list out of the mix, because who do you look to? And there's no one really that is as established, especially because how can you be established in a team that has so many new players? I think Narduzzi said something along the lines of 28 players transferred in are on their two deep, which that's really hard to adapt to. Like, we're seeing Pitt not necessarily struggle with some of their transfers, but I think about, the defensive end transfers, the O-line transfers, and they're gelling, but they also have people that have been here to help them. And that's just not the case for a West Virginia squad. So like you said, it makes me, I feel like Pitt is arguably a bigger favorite than just the 6.5 points on the spread.
It'll be interesting to see what happens because, like I said, there are a lot of reasons to like Pitt in this game, but it is the Backyard Brawl, and you really cannot discount anything. This game rarely, if ever, follows betting trends or what Vegas is going to say. Something crazy usually always happens in the Backyard Brawl. But plenty of more coverage to come later this week. We will keep talking to you guys about the Backyard Brawl, get you all the way up to kickoff of Pitt and West Virginia on Saturday afternoon. Abby and I will both be down there in Morgantown, of course, to deliver some more coverage. So make sure you stay tuned, like this video, subscribe to PG Pitt on YouTube, and make sure you're following along with all of our coverage. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.